I'm Catherine McKissick with District360. We offer these roundtables for any of the sort of hot topics that are coming up in this industry. And Josh Yeager from Bright Brothers has agreed to join us today to share his recent study, or the findings from his recent study on email trends for UPMOs, or urban place management organizations. It would be great. Usually we take a minute to introduce ourselves, but I'd love for you all to just drop in chat which district you're from and just sort of introduce yourself so Josh can get started. So welcome. Thank you for joining. Take it away, Josh.
Cool. Thank you so much for having us, Catherine. This is really interesting. We put out, well, I guess I should back up. Bright Brothers Strategy Group, I'll get into this. David and I founded this company about 9 years ago. And we put out trends reports pretty much every quarter. This one was the first time that we did one around a specific single topic. And this one actually was inspired by one of our clients. So I'll kind of dig into this as we go. So Bright Brothers, we're a strategic consultancy in Philadelphia and Phoenix. My business partner Dave's out in Phoenix with the rest of the company. And we work with downtowns, districts, and destination marketing organizations in some cities around the country. You may have seen us or heard us speak at various IDA conferences, webinars, so on and so forth. We work with a goodly number of districts around the country. And if we haven't met you yet, come find us in Chicago and hit us up. We'd love to meet you. So go ahead, Dave. Scroll down. Yeah. So this particular survey was really interesting. We had a client come to us and say, do you guys have industry standards for email? Specifically, we're looking for standard open rates and click-through rates. And I was like, I don't think that we do. And I did some research, and there's plenty of research out there for other industry verticals, whether e-commerce or healthcare or retail, hospitality, so on and so forth, but nothing specific to UPMO. So I went to IDA and I asked the research department, and I asked the VP of marketing and membership, and they said, no, we've never really looked at this before. So I was like, okay, perfect. And Allison from IDA said, this is a great topic to post in the IDEA Connection. And I don't know how many of you use the IDEA Connection, but it is a phenomenal resource. So I was going to just go post this question in IDEA Connection. And I thought, you know what? We should really take a deeper look at this. We should put a bigger framework around this to better understand. Yeah, we're going to understand open rates and click-through rates, but I kind of want to understand more about the vital role that email marketing plays for Marcom, in particular for UPMO. So background on this survey. We put out a survey. It was collecting responses during the month of May. All of the participants who responded are place management practitioners. They're all members of IDA, and they work specifically within Marcom. So I feel like we got some really good data out of this. So I'm going to talk about what the survey says. Okay, survey says. So there were two core questions we wanted to get to right from the get-go. First one is open rates. What is standard open rate? But to understand open rates, we have to kind of take a step back, because most districts send out two different types of email communications. Typically, they'll divide things between their stakeholders, like their ratepayers, their merchants, the people who are who they're serving within the district, and then the general public, because of course the public is also who we're serving. So very often there are two different sets of emails that go out. What we did was we had everybody respond, and people who do different audience types and send out different e-blasts, we blended everything together. So the total blended average for the total open rate is 37%. We did dig a little bit deeper. We found that roughly 12% of organizations had an open rate at or just above 50%. That's amazing. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you're that high, well done you. And then there were some organizations that had lower than 30%. So we took out the anomalistic outliers at the top of the bottom of the range, and that averaged 31%. So if your open rate is anywhere between 31 and 37%, you're doing really well. Next, we looked at click-through rates. And click-through rate is the number of times that people click on a link within your email and go to whatever the call to action or article or event that you're referencing. Again, we looked at total average click-through rate, and that came out to 7.22%. We removed anomalous outliers and looked at the median responses, and again, that came in around 4.5%. So if you're anywhere between 4.5 and 7.2, your email blasts are statistically performing well from a click-through rate perspective. Then so that answered the two questions that we were really trying to get at. And this is where the more came in, where I decided we really should do a survey to understand this better. And we're going to open this up to questions afterwards. So I'm going to try to get through. There's a lot of chunky content here. We will distribute the deck to anybody that wants to see the results of the report after the call. But I'm going to get into some deeper aspects of email marketing and marketing.
Let me just chime in for 1 second too. I'm tracking the questions that come in through the comments, so I'm saving those, and we'll come to those when you're ready.
Awesome. I'm going to try and excellent. I'm going to try and get through the content so we can have a convo. But just framing what we learned here. List segmentation. So this is what I was talking about up front. Does your organization maintain separate lists for consumers and for stakeholders? And 88% of districts said that they do segment their lists between these two groups. It's not surprising because the general public wants to know about things to do in your district, activities and events, and they probably really don't care about like A-frame requirements or changes in tax levies or facade improvements, anything that you would talk to your ratepayers about. So it's a good idea. You have different audiences, different targets, different needs, and so you're separating the content for both of them. 88% of districts segmented their lists between public and stakeholders. That's not surprising. Next, we looked at frequency. How frequently are you emailing your base? So what we found was the top answer was weekly. 57% of districts are sending out an e-blast a week. That's a lot in my perspective. A lot not so much in terms of hammering your list once a week is pretty good best practice, but it's a lot of footwork and legwork for your Marcom team to put that together. Next, we had 31% of respondents saying they do it every other week, which is a pretty good pace. And then just 12% of orgs send out one monthly. Of the districts that only blasted monthly, this was interesting, they consistently had really high open rates of around 47%. Their click-through rates are average, so nothing anomalous there. But what was interesting was with one person managing marketing and communications for one district, they're getting about 47%. That's incredible. That's one person doing a lot of work. Next, we looked at third-party platforms. This is best practice. You should be using a third-party platform, whether it's Constant Contact or CityLight, MailChimp, whatever you choose to use. There are best practices involved because there are all kinds of CAN spam and compliance needs. 100% of districts used a third-party platform. And I'm thrilled to see that because then that offers you flexibility in things that you do. And we'll talk about templates and things in a little bit. Next, we looked at advertorial. This is not your e-blasts. This is advertorial locally. Have you ever contracted with a local publisher or a media company to put advertorial in their e-blasts? This is something as a marketer that I'm a fan of. I've seen incredible success doing this, where you have an event that you want to promote. Maybe let's say it's a wine and dine, and you want to put advertorial in the e-blast of a local culture rag, and they blast just to their food and beverage people who have signed up for those lists. This can work really well as a marketing channel. 50% said that they had never done it. 18.75% said they've done it sometimes. Some said yes, they've done it, and a little over 6% said they're not really sure where to begin. If you have questions about advertorial or targeting in other people's e-blasts, give us a shout or we can talk about this later. Next, template differentiation. So we wanted to know, do you use different templates for different audiences? I've seen districts where they have multiple different templates. Anything that is pet related has a template. Anything that's farmers market related has a template. Anything that's events has a template. 85% of districts, the majority, use different templates for different messaging needs. I'm not going to go any deeper into that. It's a good idea to use different templates for different audiences. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into multivariate testing. So You may be familiar with A/B split testing. That's when you're only testing two variables. So for example, let's say you have a wine and dine event and you want to see how your emails perform against different segments. You may use a different template. You may use different imagery in your landing page, in the email. You may use different copy. You may test landing pages. There are all kinds of variables that we can test. This is really prevalent in industries that are super precise, like e-commerce, where they're testing all kinds of elements all the time. But for UPMOs, most respondents did not do multivariate at all. They didn't even do A/B split testing. It's not surprising, especially if you're trying to get out an email a week. But of the 15% of districts that responded said that they did do multivariate testing, and they tested in all four categories that we asked about: template, imagery, copy, and landing pages. They had an average open rate of 39% and a 4.4 click-through rate. So statistically, that was middle of the road. So in this scenario and for our industry, if you have the time, you have the resources, I'd say test. It doesn't seem to make a whole huge impact in this industry in particular. Next, we asked about graphic design. And again, this comes back to resources. Do you do graphic design in-house? Do you outsource it to an agency? Or do you have a hybrid model? And half of the respondents said that they have paid staff who handle their graphic design. 31+% said they outsource. And then 18.75% said that they have a hybrid model. What's interesting here, this comes back to me trying to understand size of populations, which typically is indicative of resourcing, funding, I should say, leading to resourcing, leading to how many people do you have handling Marcom, how many Marcom staff on staff. If you're a bigger agency, or I'm sorry, a bigger organization, you probably outsource. If not, you may do it yourself in-house. You're super crafty, super choppy, or you may do a hybrid where you're doing some of it and the agency is doing some of it. Channel value is the next thing that we looked at, and that's really understanding amongst everything that a Marcom person is doing. And Marcom gets hit with everything. It doesn't matter what is happening in the organization. Usually something trickles down and it lands in Marcom's lap. So Marcom gets hammered with a lot of needs, wants, and requests all the time. But as far as everything that they're doing, social media, e-blasts, website content, media buying, advertising, graphic design, all of these things, ranked on an importance, how important was email to you? 4.5 out of 5. The average response was 4.5 out of 5, but about 57% said that it was the most important channel for them. And then the percentages went down. We know that email marketing is one of the top, if not the top, performance marketing vehicles that you have at your avail as a UPMO marketer. And that stands to be the case in many industries, not just for place management. Next, we look at changes. Are you planning on increasing, decreasing? Like, how important is this moving forward? 75% of the organizations that responded said they plan to stay about the same moving forward. 12.5% think that they're going to put more resources into email marketing moving forward. And some of like 6.25% said we plan on making better use of tracking tools and A/B split testing. So we're all trying to improve all the time. Email still is going to be a mainstay for the coming years. Goal setting was the next thing that we looked at. And this is stuff that really interests me. There's an expression that I love to use, learned in school a million years ago: that which gets measured gets done. Email and pretty much any digital marketing that we do today, we have metrics out the wazoo. So it's interesting to see because we can do goal setting around this. So we want to know, does your organization have quantifiable goals for list growth, increased frequency performance, or improved quality of communications? This is important not only for the organization's goal settings, but then also individually for your Marcom team and potentially tied to their performance reviews, compensation, all sorts of things. 50% said, yes, we're constantly trying to improve our email efforts. 25% were like, no, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And then we have varying degrees of people responding saying, we're working on it. We're not really sure how to do this. We're too understaffed to put goals together. I feel really badly if your organization is too understaffed to put goals together. It really takes a minute amount of time, pull the resources, put them together, put together a plan. But the reality is some organizations just don't have the resources to do that. On the next page, we're looking again at goal setting, but we want to understand, are you struggling with which goals to even look at? Are you struggling with the KPIs, the metrics, and the outcomes? 30, almost 38% said they didn't need help. Some said they just needed a sounding board. Some were unsure. Some definitely are struggling. And again, we feel really bad for those guys that are struggling to put it together. If you have questions, if you need help, even identifying which metrics are important to you, give us a shout, because that's what we do all day long. Anecdotally speaking, and this is outside of quantifiable impacts, I wanted to know some things around, like, what's the best email campaign or single e-blast your organization has ever sent. We documented some responses here. I think it's interesting. People said things about their new CEO was most impactful during the pandemic. They really had the community rally and support around them. An email blast about open streets, closing a major sector in a district. It got really good performance. It's interesting to look at those anecdotally. On the next page, this fell under anecdotal as well, but I really, really like this. So we have lists, our email lists. There is a trend for cleaning them called an opt-out strategy. And basically, if you're handling emails, you need to constantly be doing list hygiene. A lot of email providers help you with automated list hygiene things, but sometimes it's good to take a step back and say, like, do we really need to be blasting all these people? Some people may have signed up 10, 15 years ago and moved away, and they just stopped opening your emails. Some list management services will automatically remove those. But what one district told us, and I really love this, they said they used MailChimp. They scrubbed their list of people who had the lowest open rates. So if they hadn't opened an email between 0 to 10%, which ended up being almost a fifth or 20% of their total list, they just deleted them. They didn't send them a like, hey, we haven't heard from you in a while. Do you still want to keep receiving these? Some people do that as part of an opt-out strategy. These guys didn't. They just cut the fat. They said, guys aren't opening our emails. They're not reading them. Their previous open rate was 27%. It jumped to 38% once they scrubbed this. Once they scrubbed this subscriber list. Kudos to that district, because I think that was a really smart move. Just get rid of the waste. Then some quick peer insights I'm going to go through. And this is more benchmarking to understand, like I was saying earlier, the size of your local population often is indicative of the amount of funds that districts get, and then that in turn indicates the number of resources. So we really kind of want to understand, like, how big is your local population? What's the total size of your staff? And what's the size of your Marcom staff? So this was interesting. The rates of respondents responding were varied across different sizes of populations. And I'm not going to go through all those. You can read them when we send it back out. What's the size of your total staff? Most staffs were about 14 people. But if we took out the top organizations that had staffs of over 30, the average head count for the total organization is 7 staff members, which is pretty much more aligned with the norm of the districts that we work with. We see about that size. Sometimes we work with really big districts, but 7 staff members makes sense. Then dialing into Marcom, the average number of Marcom staff is 2 people. The largest number was 4 people. So that was for the best funded, biggest district, had 4 people handling Marcom. Those are the folks that probably can handle doing A/B and split and multivariate testing. Conversely, the smallest Marcom staff was 0. So this organization has 1 person wearing many hats. We also asked who's going to attend IDA in Chicago this year, which we will definitely be there. We're speaking again for like the 8th year in a row. 75% of the respondents plan on attending IDA in Chicago. So that's kind of the sum of everything that we learned from the survey, which we thought was really interesting. Catherine saw this and was like, yo, this is really good stuff. We'd love to do a roundtable about it. And that's why we're here today. So we've got some more time now. Want to know, what are your questions? What do you want to know? I may not have answers if it wasn't something that was specifically asked or that we statistically looked at, but let's have a convo. That's what this roundtable is about.
Thank you so much, Josh. If anyone has a question Oh, there's one from Pamela. And I also had one that she wrote in earlier. So I'll club the two together. When you started at the beginning, you were talking about open rates. I think it was one of the first two content slides. She was curious to know if that was a unique open rate or just an overall open rate. And then her second question is around what kinds of goals to set as an organization.
Okay. It was just general open rate. It was not unique open rate, and it was blended across. It was all of the statistics, whether they had separate stakeholder and consumer e-blasts. We took all of those numbers and averaged them together to get the 37%. And then the second question, I'm sorry, was
hold on one sec. How do you know what kinds of goals to set?
I think,
and Pam, feel free to come and clarify that question if you'd like to.
Yeah, sure. I was just, you can hear me, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering, yeah, you mentioned goals and it was like, you know, are we always trying to get a higher open rate? Are we trying to get more subscribers? Like, how do you know kind of what types of goals to set, knowing that we should always be setting them?
yeah, so when we typically look at doing strategic work with districts, we'll start really at the top. What are the organization's objectives? And then how do the individual verticals within the organization funnel up to meet those objectives? If we're just looking at Marcom, you could set benchmark goals for yourself. Like, I feel like the open rate is low. Like, let's say your average open rate is only 27%. Then you could set a goal for yourself and say, in the next year, I'm going to try and get that open rate higher. And you could do that by deploying things like list hygiene. Maybe get rid of those dead folks, in terms of subscribers who aren't opening and reading your e-blasts. I think it's more important for you ultimately to be using Marcom as the tool to support the district's initiatives. Your initiatives may not even be around email marketing itself. It could be, we want a 20% increase in footfall around our events. And then supporting the email marketing is really just a tool or a technology or a tactic that supports that. So build up from that. Does that make sense? Or are you looking more for specifically with regard to email, I want to do A, B, and C?
No, I think that makes sense. I have a couple other questions just about the data because I'm thinking about but I don't want to take up all the time. But if there was anything you were able to share, like, I would be curious to know, like, how many subscribers were you looked at, and then even, I know you lumped them together, but it would be great to know like the two sets, right, for the stakeholders versus. So I don't know if that's something you could share now or maybe after.
Yeah, I can go back and dig and look and see if there was anything statistically. We did see that as far as I don't remember if it was open rates or click-through rates. No, it was click-through rates. That stakeholders had higher click-through rate.
Okay.
They should be more engaged because they're the ones whose businesses rely on what you guys are doing, as opposed to the general public. But I think that was the only thing that we really isolated that was significant to us.
Okay. And otherwise the open rates were similar between the two audience groups?
On open rates, I can go back and dig and find out what the difference is between the two on open rates.
Sure. I would just be curious to know if it was drastically different in any way. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, I would expect that open rates would be higher with ratepayers and stakeholders. But then again, I've also worked with enough districts to know that sometimes you feel like you're putting this message out there again and again and again, and people aren't listening. And then when something happens, they come back and ask you, why didn't I hear about this? And it's like, I emailed you about this for 6 weeks. Like, are you reading your emails? Do you know what's going on? But yeah, I will look into that, Pamela.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
There's another question from Shauna Sanchez. I don't know if she's still here, but her question was, what were the types of e-blasts looked at? Monthly e-news versus event e-blasts versus informational e-blasts. I think you covered that on one of the first slides that you looked at different types, but maybe just sort of recapping that or summarizing it.
Yeah, we didn't specifically ask them to break down what types of e-blasts, just if they had different types of e-blasts. And with districts that by the way, Shauna, hi. Good. Thanks for coming. Shauna's out in KOP, and we have a weird familial connection through animal rescue. So hi if you're still here. But
I'm here.
hi. Thanks for attending. So I'm sorry. Now I got sidetracked.
Emoticon. It's a cat.
Yeah. Now I got sidetracked thinking about cat rescue. What was the question again, Shauna? I'm sorry.
My question was, well, the data is really interesting, but I'm interested to know if I'm sure it wasn't part of this study, if there are plans to do anything as far as the breakdown of types of email and then the rates, because I know informational, no call to action, obviously we're not going to have those stats that are as high as some of our other types of emails, like monthly. I know you said people that send monthly emails had a higher click-through rate generally. Are those e-news emails? Like what kinds of emails are those? That's what I'm kind of just interested in.
Yeah, we didn't specifically ask about those, but I've wanted to do a follow-up survey. So I think a lot of the intel and conversation we're going to get out of today's convo will help inform those questions for us to do a follow-up survey. So I definitely will circle back with you, Shauna, on that and see if we can dig deep into that on the next round.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else?
I know my team has a couple of questions.
Sure.
So we were curious to know, and my team wanted to do a poll, but I'm being challenged at the functionality of that at the moment. But if you guys could chime in, that'd be great. My team was curious to know what email apps are you using? So Josh mentioned the standard ones that we typically hear of too: MailChimp, Constant Contact. Emma is one that we've heard of organizations using. Did I already say MailChimp? And HubSpot. But I'm curious to know, Campaign Monitor. What are you folks using for your email platforms?
We personally use MailChimp. Professionally use MailChimp. I do see here, I'm seeing the pop-up. Yeah. City Light, Constant Contact. This is a good question, though, for us to drill into this for the next survey.
We use MailChimp as well, and I'm curious, just from a technology standpoint, if there are benefit, with your expertise, is there a platform that you recommend to folks, or I don't know, just curious to know what folks are using and how that may or may not, I don't know, impact email communications as well.
Yeah, I mean, we as a company are technology agnostic, so I don't necessarily say you should use this or you should use this. I've heard of Emma, and Emma sticks in my mind, but I think I only recall like 1 or 2 clients ever using Emma. I don't know, Dave, if you have experience with Emma. I think almost everybody uses MailChimp, Constant Contact, or something very industry specific, whether that's City Light or, oh, hey, Joan. Yeah, Constant Contact.
Yeah. Those are the ones we typically hear too. We just hear occasionally, some folks use HubSpot, but mostly we hear unhappiness with that tool for other reasons. Okay, that's interesting. I'm also curious to know how folks who have joined this call, do your stats align with these benchmarks? Are you higher or lower than what Josh's team found?
That's a good question. I like that.
Beth. Yep, go ahead, Beth.
Hi, I'm from Canada.
Hi, Beth.
Hi. So I was really thrilled to see that my statistics are in line with yours.
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yep, you can hear me. That's why I joined the call, because I was just really curious about how I should be. And I am a part-time executive director with a group of about 200 businesses in our downtown. And we are a tourism town in the Rocky Mountains. And so we have the two different kinds of email blasts, or a blog and a newsletter that goes out, blog on our website and a newsletter that goes out to people that just visit us and have signed up through that way. And then I have a marketing group that helps me with those. And then I do the ones that are like to my subscribers, like to my stakeholders and my businesses. And I get anywhere from a 42 to a 57% on the stakeholder one. The other one is in the 30s, always in the 30s. And depending on whether or not we're doing some kind of campaign to attract people during, especially our low season, which is in the winter. So I'm actually quite pleased with my little amounts of money that I spend, that it's having the same effect as large organizations.
Yeah. I mean, Beth, that's a testament. You're one of those folks that's doing a lot with little, and so this is very validating. And this is kind of why we thought it was important to publish this, is because we knew that obviously one district wanted to know, like, where do I sit in the whole matrix? So for you to be handling and doing all of that with a limited amount of resources that you have, and the significant number of stakeholders that you're supporting, that's really excellent. I'm glad to hear that.
Oh, thank you. And a lot of it, I must say that the one that grew the most, which was our outside one, actually happened during COVID, of course, because we were getting a lot of rubber tire traffic because people couldn't travel to the States or other places in the world. So so it really helped. And we did some targeting in some of the large cities, Edmonton and Calgary, to get more people visiting and stuff through some of those email blasts and campaigns. So we were really pleased with how that has grown organically without a lot of money being put into it.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Beth, which district are you with, out of curiosity?
Pardon me?
Which BIA are you with?
Downtown Canmore. Canmore, Alberta. Yeah.
Okay.
So, like I said, we're a small zone. It's the traditional mining town become a tourism town in the Rocky Mountains. We're about 20 minutes from Banff, which a lot of people know where Banff is compared to where we are. So we're about 20 minutes. We're not in the national park. We're just outside of it, but we have grown substantially since the 80s and 90s into a tourism community once we stopped being a coal mining town.
Right. And I mean, that's a difficult transition too. It takes time and effort, and you can see how that's building, and that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining today.
Thanks, Beth. Anyone else have any comments on whether you're surprised or not surprised that your email stats aligned with the industry findings?
There's a comment in the chat.
Oh, yeah, I should keep that open.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Pamela says our open rate is much higher, but I'm wondering if it's because of our subscriber count is lower. Downtown services, which I think you said you are downtown services, you're Columbus, Ohio. In line with the stat share. Shauna says our open rate is average, but our click-through rate is low. And then my comment was one about the audience size. I don't remember, I read through the report, Josh, but did you talk about audience size in the presentation?
We didn't dig into the number of subscribers, and that's something that I'd like to explore further with a second survey. We did want to look at the size of the residents, the residential district, but not specifically. And I didn't want people to feel bad if their list size didn't necessarily meet peers. You can have a really small but mighty list. I mean, one of the insights that we found with frequency was that one person managing marketing communications, they consistently had very high open rates of around 47% and average click-throughs, but one of the smallest Marcom staffs. So there's a really naughty joke in here, but we can go back and look at size and ask and dig deeper into that as far as size of lists. And I think that that will be helpful, at least from a benchmarking standpoint and knowing how you stack up with your peers.
Cool. And actually, going back to that, Kate, I'm sorry, I'm going to take over for 1 second. Going back to that question of what service, like what outside email service do you use, does anyone use anything out aside from MailChimp, Constant Contact, Emma, Campaign Monitor? Those are all the ones that we talked about. Because I feel like those are the most common ones, but I'm curious to know if anyone uses anything other than those.
Holly, Sydney on our staff put in there, we use City Light through our website.
Right, City Light as well. Okay, thank you for reminding me of that one. That's above the fold here. Okay. Kate, do you want me just to ask that next question? What was the last question that I said? Oh yeah, I'm curious to know, I guess if you all use, most of you use MailChimp, Constant Contact, and some of these other ones, City Light, then we were just curious to know how much you pay for it. And I asked that because I ran into a client or a BIA or a bid, I can't remember which one, a while ago that was paying some enormous amount a month, and then they ended up switching to MailChimp because it was much more affordable. But are you using the free version? Do you use like it under $50, over $50, or do you just not know? Feel free to.
I think a lot of times the pricing is tied to the number of emails that you're sending to and the frequency that you send. But yeah, I mean, I think MailChimp has some pretty affordable rates. I don't know what other folks are using.
We use MailChimp, and it is based on your email, your contact list size, and I think we're paying more than 100, but not 150 a month.
Yeah, that makes sense. Ebony, thanks for showing today.
Hey,
Hi.
I'm at the party.
Hi, I heard that you were going to be here, so I'm glad to see you.
Yes, happy to be here.
Excellent.
Ebony's from downtown DC, everyone.
And Ebony, I feel like maybe your district participated in this as far as respondents. Somebody from DC.
I hope so. I'm not in comms anymore, but I'm always sticking my nose in. So hopefully somebody did respond from our team.
It's good. You know, we find that a lot where executive directors, obviously EDs and CEOs have a million things that they have to do that they're responsible for, but they still come back to their true love. And a lot of us came out of marketing communications. So it's like, that's the fun stuff. That's the cool stuff to work on. I'm trying to find out, are you downtowndc.org?
Yes, we're downtown
Yeah,
DC.
Your Marcom person did respond to the survey and had really good insights.
Cool. Okay.
Yes.
Yay.
Thank him for me, please. Who else has a question?
Yeah, questions.
There are actually two in the chat that we didn't get to. Shauna Sanchez asked, or maybe you guys talked about this, and forgive me if you did, what types of e-blasts were looked at? Did you talk about that and I missed it?
We talked about it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I had another question of what is a good number? You talked about testing a little bit, and this is where sort of list size came in. If you do an A/B test or a 50-50 split, what's a good number? Does it matter? I mean, I'm asking about statistically significant results because a lot of times those A/B tests are really close. How big of a list do you need to really do good A/B testing?
mean, personally, I don't think you need a huge list at all. Even if you just wanted to isolate like the folks who are most engaged with your e-blasts, you could take 100 folks and split them into 2 groups. It really kind of depends on what is it ultimately that you want to A/B split test. If it's ticket, here's an ideal scenario, because a lot of times as practitioners, we're not selling things. Like e-commerce is the golden scenario where we can track everything, because ultimately there is an event or an action at the end, a purchase, and then lifetime value of that purchase that we can track, all kinds of metrics that we can track. When we're promoting people on the street or participation at an event or a sale, it's not necessarily the same thing. It's not always apples to apples. And we can look at things like ped counts and foot traffic, but let's say hypothetically, we were looking at selling tickets. Again, I love this wine and dine. I use this scenario all the time. Let's say we have a ticketed event. It's a wine and dine. The tickets are $100. You have 100 people on the list. We're just going to split into 2 things. Maybe we focus on the wine in one e-blast and we focus on the dine in the other e-blast. So we split the group into 2 and we look which resonated more with people. You can scale that up or scale that back down, but it might help you determine for next year, do we want to put more emphasis on wine? Do we want to put more emphasis on the dine aspects of it? And then there are all kinds of other multivariates, like, is this a family-friendly event? Do we want to talk about it being pet-friendly? Do we want to talk about other corollary attractions? We can split and go into so many David and I, my business partner, David, who's on the call here, David and I are absolute data nerds, which is why we love this stuff. Multivariate testing gets me super excited because we can really track and really dig in. And then, just like this call, get you thinking, what else should I be asking? What else should I be doing? Could I test my call to action? Could I do 25 different calls to action, like buy your tickets here, get your tickets here, free parking with ticket? There are all kinds of different ways you can splice it and dice it and things to test. So I don't know that you need a massive list to test something. You just need a decent population size. It really depends on what are you trying to do. If we're selling something, cool. It's great. We can follow that all the way through. And I think that's great for A/B split testing. But I'd say if you have the time and the resources and the staff and the money, go for it. Test. Because it's just going to lead you to more insights and or more questions, which is going to help you further refine your Marcom.
Yeah, I actually want to follow up on that with 2 things. One, does everyone understand what A/B testing is? I mean, I have a direct marketing background, so I get that. But curious to know, and does anyone else do it?
We have done it before. We haven't done it consistently. And I think that it helps if you're actually in the Marcom. So we did it when I was in the Marcom department. And I think like one of my questions, and I don't know if this is related, is, you know, for bids, especially when there isn't a call to action, we're not selling anything. And you may have already covered this since I joined late. How do you track engagement? Because I feel like one of the ways we track engagement is through click-throughs. But I know I read through a lot of emails and don't click. Doesn't mean I missed the content. And so I don't know if that is really a fair way to track it. Of course, you can, who opened it, all those kinds of things if you have bounces. But I guess I say that in line with the A/B testing is because, yes, we can test out like the headlines, we can test out those different things. I'm more interested on who are we actually engaging, and do we just settle for if they opened it? That might have been a loaded question, but
it's a good question.
It is, and you're spot on, Ebony. Like there's so many things that you can test, and you can make yourself crazy with testing. I mean, you could never get an e-blast out the door if you wanted to sit there and slice and dice a million ways. I'm with you. I love testing different things, but it is hard if you're looking at softer metrics. Like honestly, open rate and click-through rate, they're good, they're solid, but it's not like it's the end of the world if you go in one way or another. One of the things that I'm really, it's like a personal pet peeve, professional pet peeve on this topic, and I think you touched on this, single topic, and we didn't look at this, and I want to look at this in the next one, single topic or multi-topic e-blasts, because I subscribe to a lot of districts' emails, and on a weekly basis, I'm probably reading 25 to 30 different districts' emails, keeping on top of things, looking for great ideas, looking at what people are doing. Way too many of our peers are loading their e-blast this long with every single piece of information that is on their website. It's like, you want people to read this. You want engagement. Why? Nobody is scrolling 30 scrolls down to the bottom of this. There's a district here in Philly that sends out a weekly e-blast, and I don't know how their ED does anything other than write an e-blast a week. I mean, they're getting things done. They're doing things, but it's like, holy crap, man, this is so much content. And I think I'm probably reading more than most people who are receiving it. David and I talk all the time about single topic e-blasts. If you really want to make an impact, you have an event coming up, and somebody mentioned this in the anecdotal section. If you have an event coming up, focus in on the single topic e-blast 1 to 3 days before the event, and that's going to help put you over the edge. You're going to get the bang for the buck that you want. But there's got to be a good mix between multi-topic e-blasts and not too many multi-topics, and just, there's one thing we needed to pay attention. Sit up. It's happening this weekend. We want you to come out. Boom. Single topic.
Here's my question, and I can't see everybody, so please, Holly, cut me off if there are other questions. So you guys know what happens. Everybody wants their stuff in the newsletter because everybody thinks it's important, and you can only push people back so long. And I do think part of it has to be, you have to have a strategic and intentional strategy about what we're going to put in the newsletter.
Yeah.
My thought with that is, I feel like we are on the balancing beam, if that's the right analogy, of what the org is doing and events. And do we send it out every 2 weeks, every week? Because then if you, like, I like the idea of single topic email. Quite frankly, Josh, I don't think we're ever going to get there, but I like it. I like it. And I'm definitely a fan of condensing it. But then my question becomes, what do you do? Like, is it, because right now we're doing once every 2 weeks. And then if we have a special event that we're producing, we'll put out the one, like you said, 1 to 3 days before.
Yeah.
But like, okay, so do we go now? Do we still keep it at once every 2 weeks and just cut content? What do we do?
This is an interesting challenge, Emily, and honestly, maybe very different from what I've heard from a lot of districts. So am I hearing and understanding correctly that you have too many asks from your ratepayers to promote their stuff, that this is what's leading to this giant long email, and that you're trying to temper it?
We have too many internal asks, Josh. Ratepayers aren't asking us to do anything but tell them about events. But and I shouldn't say it like that. So, there's the due diligence of what we're doing.
Yeah.
This safety meeting, this new initiative, blah, blah, blah. Those things are important. But how do you balance that with events that are happening?
Yeah. I mean, this also comes back to, for me anyway, and Dave, you may have another solution here, editorial calendar. We have some clients that have a published editorial calendar, and they say, these are the themes, and this is what is going out. You get me this content by this date, or it does not get in this email. And then maybe it has to wait for another quarter until it cycles back around, depending on how many asks. So if there's too many internal asks, maybe some guide rails in place that might help. That this is what I was talking about, though. Marcom gets hit with everything, Marcom. David, do you have any thoughts about that too, as far as like how to temper?
Yeah, number one is just having a strategy and saying, listen, that's not part of our strategy right now. And the second one, like Josh said, putting up rules, like saying you have to have this information to me 2 weeks in advance, realistically knowing that no one is ever going to get that to you on time, so you'll always have an excuse to not put it in. I mean, it sounds terrible, but it works.
Right, like it needs to have, and you need to meet these criteria, A, B, C, D, and E. And if you don't have all those ducks in a row and it's not published someplace that I can point a link to, then no, we're not talking about it. But again, I mean, every organization is different, and obviously there's politics involved, there's personal politics involved, there's workplace politics involved. It's always, yeah. I feel you, Ebony. What other questions do we have? Yeah.
So I just wanted to say, we do have rules. We put out a resource book, mostly for social media. We don't really use our newsletter for individual businesses events. We use it for ours, and then linking to our website where we list, if we're having a food festival or a beer sponsor on our website, we'll list what business is. But for everything else, our social media, we have a pretty strict policy. We bend it, but it's our choice to bend it.
Right.
Like we can't, tag us, but we can't repost everything, and we can repost it in stories, but not always in feed. But if you want the feed, we need 2 weeks. Of course, a lot of people don't follow the rules, but it allows us, if we feel the event is big enough or a big enough draw, we'll break the rules ourselves. But we really drive people all the time to that resource book and our social media policy. So they, we get people mad at us. I tagged you 10 times and you didn't repost. Well, you're tagging on a piece of furniture with a price point. That's not really interesting to our people.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. That's a fine line that you have to
Just
walk
wanted
in
to share
too.
that.
Like, yeah, that makes sense. And Joan, you post do you only post events on your website, or anything that's news from your constituents goes on the website? And do they submit it to you, or do they have like an auto, like we've worked with clients that had a portal that if a merchant wanted to promote something, they logged in, they filled out all the thing, published it, got approved.
My emails I have a bad connection.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, that's it's interesting because we've seen districts where they're like, we want to help you, we're here to promote your business, send us your specials, especially when you're trying to do themed content, like you have a holiday coming up, or you have, it's St. Patrick's Day, send us your St. Patty Day special. Nobody sends it to you until like 36 hours before, and then they want you to jump on it and promote it for them. And it's like, well, we needed this, 3 weeks ago. Or if you're in the media, this was another thing, like the media is asking you to submit your St. Patrick's Day specials like right after Christmas. So it's like no business actually has those together. Most of them are flying by the seat of their pants, managing their businesses to not get you the specials until like right before your content goes out. It's tough. It's a balancing act.
Yeah, we do. I can hear now. We do try to post some of their specials on the website. I'm not sure it's the most effective, but it's just the best platform for that much information. Hopefully people will go, we'll link on an event on all our digital ads right to that particular event page. So they don't have to go to our homepage.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, you're Manayunk. You guys are right outside of Philly. A lot of bars and restaurants and breweries in the district. You get a lot of footfall. It's been a hot minute since I've been over there, but yeah, I can imagine. And I follow you guys in social. I don't know that I'm subscribed to your emails, but there's always a lot going on.
Yeah. Well, our Instagram has really grown. It's been a great tool for us. But we have somebody, it's not the only thing she does, but as part of our marketing department, we have someone in events, someone in social media. So, and then we actually even use a consultant for for strategy and a content calendar.
Yeah, that's smart. And that makes sense. Speaking of emails, you guys, if you haven't subscribed to ours, shameless plug, go anywhere on our website, bright-brothers.com. You'll either get a pop-up or scroll down and there's a sign up. We put out an e-blast twice a month that is 5 topics, and they're always specific to placemaking, economic development, anything related to UPMO. If you're in urban place management or destination marketing, there's usually pretty good content. And we've polled our subscribers as well. What do you want to see more of? It's always what are other districts doing? What are best practices? So that's really what we try to focus on when we put our content together. But I do have an e-blast going out this week. So if you sign up, you'll get on the list for this week's distribution. And I think we have a pretty good one this week. Do we have any other questions that we want to get to?
Can you put a link in the chat to the sign up?
Yeah, I think so. Dave, Dave is my, yes, David is a technical whiz. So that's why he's handling all the good AV stuff.
Joan, I saw that you also had a question about District360 and the MailChimp integration. And most of our, I would say, I don't know, Kate, what do you think? Like 80% of our clients use MailChimp.
Yeah.
So we can, I mean, I don't know if anyone wants to, I don't know. Ebony, do you guys integrate your MailChimp with District360?
We do, but we're like treating it like a stepchild, unfortunately. So we don't use it as much as we used to. So it's integrated on each contact record, and you can see, but we just haven't like pulled the plug to say, well, or activate it again. So, and that's for lots of reasons, but we have the capability to do it.
Okay. So Joan, if you want to, oh, go ahead.
Whose question was that, Joan or Pamela?
Pamela.
Oh, good
I think it's
question.
Pamela's.
Pamela. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah.
Pamela, we can connect with you offline, but what it essentially does is it puts your list management within your CRM. So let's say I'm entering a new contact into my CRM and I realize, oh, I want to add them to this list and this list and this list. You can just do it right there and know that next time you go to execute that newsletter or whatever mailing it is, those subscribers are maintained or kept current between your CRM and MailChimp. So it's just it makes it more of a team sport. So everyone doesn't have to email you to subscribe these 5 people to a list. And it gives you some insights into their engagement directly within the CRM. So you can see their open, there's a few high level metrics that you can see from there. Yeah. Thank you all so much for coming. Really appreciate Josh and David, you joining and sharing your insights. And once you do the next survey, we're gonna have another roundtable and bring everyone back. So thank you all for joining, and we'll all see each other in Chicago.